Hi guys, so yesterday I left you with this image of the NI child having inherited the guilt of his or her mother, and that guilt, which we might describe as a kind of primal guilt, being especially activated as a result of the envious spoiling of the breast that the child does in fantasy when it is faced with an idealized loved object, namely the mother breast, because at that very early time the infant certainly doesn't have a notion of his mother or himself or anyone as a total human being. This is the if you like, the phase of what we refer to in psychoanalysis as part objects. So the breast is the loved object, and the breast is both loved and hated because it is so idealized that it reminds the child of his or her own limitations, particularly if there are self-esteem issues that might themselves be the legacy of primal guilt. So this is a really kind of complex psychodynamic tapestry that I'm weaving for you here, but it is important as part of this crucial element of this origin story of how one becomes an NI dominant, mostly, as you can see, as a result of nurture and not of nature. Although nature, and more specifically genetics, has an impact, especially as regards the genetic disposition to have a kind of temperament that is sensitive to external stimuli. Maybe the infant cries more, is more easily distressed by external events than average. Okay. So as a result of that, the desire for repair is going to be enormous, because the desire for repair first emerges, of course it is a manifestation of empathy, and it first emerges in response to the devastation that the child has wreaked on the breast, reduced it literally to bits in fantasy, realizes that it has damaged the loved object and it needs to be repaired. Okay? So to soothe the guilt, because the guilt is so powerful in that it combines both the normal reparative guilt of any infant and the primal guilt that it had inherited from his mother at the end of fusion with the trauma of birth, and that is reactivated by the second phenomenon of guilt, which is the reparative guilt. The anxiety that this produces is massive, and it has to be addressed by some kind of defense mechanism. And we can actually say with confidence, I believe, that the fantasy of repair, the fantasized repair of the breast, because that's its original form, is if you like, it's set in motion as the most important fantasy, the definitive fantasy, because it is summoned and marshaled in response to this form of anxiety which is overwhelming all others, which is the reparative anxiety. Since if you like, the symbolic knot that is stitching together the unconscious of the child is porous. It is partly porous as a result of the porosity of the boundary between child's unconscious and mother's unconscious to start with. It's open to being infiltrated, it's open to being filled up. Its kernel is filled up by the contents of the fantasy of repair. This is sealed around 1 year of age, and there you have it. The symbolic core and the symbolic kernel of the unconscious of this child is going to be narrativized by a motif of repair throughout the life of this particular person. And that's what we call being NI dominant. And that's how we come to our account of how someone becomes an NI dominant. You see that in this particular story that I've narrated, I've mostly talked about particular nurture-related psychodynamics. I have not talked about intelligence or cognitive endowment, which I think is the right way of looking at it. The reasons that, if you like, the causal factors that lead the very young child to become NI dominant don't have anything to do with intelligence. They might be linked to factors that correlate with intelligence, such as sensitivity to stimuli that we talked about, and that have a genetic origin. But for the most part, they're not at all intellectual or cognitive. They're 95% affective and emotional. Fantasies are, remember, chains of representations linked by affects. Okay? Chains of representations linked by affects. Affect, for 95% of it, is the reason why we become NI dominant and other people become other types. If you would like to support me on Patreon, please consider doing so. The link to my Patreon is below. I'd be so grateful because I need your support. I cannot do this work without you, so I'd be so really grateful if you did support me. I cannot do this work without you, and for me to continue producing quality content, you know that in return you get access to a whole library of deep dives that are long format videos for the patrons, and access to our Discord server. Come hang out with us on an everyday basis. We're a fun community and we love to have you there. And don't forget about my 2 books on the INFJ that are also very much worth reading. The Ecstatic Soul, which is the book about the INFJ's inner world, thoughts, fantasies, consciousness, and the Infinite Soul, which is more about the INFJ's outer world, how INFJs find purpose, meaning, and value in a world they often find hostile. 2 links are below. See you tomorrow, guys. Take care.